So we're out taking Jaw for a walk because he's gonna go to Pollyanna's today. This is date afternoon for him. And then I'm gonna go do our vlog at the movie theater today. Are you gonna play with Pollyanna today? Well, let's rock and roll, man. That's cool. As I'm leaving, dropping off Jaw, these people have the Declaration of Independence as the decoration on their front door. So I'm gonna go hit the post office and mail out a few things. I really would love to try out a different post office because I have so many problems with the Hollywood one, but I like using those like machines, that self-use machines, and not all the post offices here have them, and most of the ones near me don't have them, so I'm kind of stuck, I think. Wow, it is a scorching 92 degrees out here today. It's really hot. I mean, it feels hotter than 92. All right, I swear I'm going into it with positive vibes today, I swear. In the name of the subject we're gonna do today, I'm gonna keep thinking positive, think positive. All right, everything is ready to go. Yes. Perfection. Yeah, everything went flawlessly. Positive thinking, I guess. All right, now I wanna head over to the Vermont area. Well, we've made it over to the Vermont area, and what I want to do today is I'm going to focus our vlog on one of my earliest influences in life, Mr. Fred Rogers. Now, it's kind of interesting that a man who had become so synonymous with television would actually get his start in it because he didn't like the format. Well, he liked the medium, but he didn't like what was on it. Yeah, as crazy as that sounds, Fred said he actually got into television because he liked the idea of what you could do with it and how many people you could reach, but he didn't think they were using it for the right purposes. So he actually got into it and got his start in, well, pretty much New York City doing puppeteering for television shows. Now, Fred was originally from the Pittsburgh area, so when he was working in New York City, he would hear that there was a local Pittsburgh station that was starting out that was looking for talent, and they were going to do all educational television. Well, he applied for the job, was one of the few 6 that was hired, and as he said, was the only one that wanted to do or was willing to do a kids show. Nobody wanted to do it, so he dove in with a secretary, and the next thing you know, we had Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Now, all of the puppeteering and the voices were done by Mr. Rogers. He wrote all of the music and performed all the music, so I'm really curious to see what more we learn about him in this movie. There's a popular movie out right now, done fully with his family's consent, called Won't You Be My Neighbor? Now, I remember one of my earliest memories in life would be my mom picking up my sister and I when we were really young from the babysitter while she was working. She would come pick us up and we would get home just in time for me to be able to watch a little bit of Mr. Rogers and my sister to watch the Brady Bunch. So probably from the year 3 or 4 years old, I was watching Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And if any of you remember my earliest episodes of my channel, you probably remember that I used to start my show every day almost like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, where I would show what kind of shoes I was wearing, what shirt I was wearing. So today I decided to go see the movie in a theater that we haven't been to before. This is the Los Feliz 5. This was a theater that was built in the 20s, so it should have a pretty classic interior. I think I've seen a movie here once before, but I know for sure I've never vlogged it. Hello, Charlie and Morgan Freeman and the crazy eyes. So there it is. That's where we're gonna see it. They're showing Incredibles 2 and Won't You Be My Neighbor? A little kindness makes a world of difference. All right. Yeah, what a positive influence he was. I can't wait to see what all they teach me about him. As many bad things as you hear about people after they pass away or after their career's over, after they retire, you never heard anything bad about him. I know he became a vegan in his 40s. I know that he never drank, never smoked, and he swam every day. So, see what else we find out. Well, I'll tell you, the mark of a great documentary is not only when you learn something, but when you feel something also. And when the entire theater is wiping their eyes at the end, you know that the person the movie's made about made an impact in the world. Now, one of the funny things that they kind of talk about in the movie, and it was a long time rumor, and I totally forgot to mention it on here, was something I had always heard when I was like in junior high, was everybody always said that Mr. Rogers always wore the sweater because he had tattooed sleeves, because he had been a Navy SEAL and, you know, had all these kills, and that's why he was always such a nice guy from now on. And in the movie they dispel that and say that he was basically like he had never done any of that, and that was all fabricated lies. Yeah, the people on the crew said that Fred was, you know, he was basically like grew up a kind of a rich kid that didn't have to fix anything or repair anything, so they said he couldn't even really use a screwdriver. But they said his family always stopped him from having any kind of feelings or ever expressing any anger, so that's kind of what tapped into who he became later on. Now, what I actually didn't know was that after some 500 or 600 odd episodes, Mr. Rogers called it quits because he wanted to go into making basically the same type of show but for adults, where he could help adults. And it was actually the craze of superheroes, kids wearing capes and pretending to be Superman, that actually brought him out of retirement. Yep, go figure. Pretty much what's a mainstay now for kids entertainment, which is violence and superheroes and wearing capes and doing things that are out of the ordinary or just super. Those are the things that actually annoyed Mr. Rogers. He felt that it was disingenuous to make kids think that they had to be more than just being them. And that's also what provoked Mr. Rogers. When he came back, he started doing entire weeks dedicated to subjects like death or divorce or loneliness or anger or sadness, or, you know, it's pretty cool to see in there where the funding for public broadcasting was going to be shut down, and Mr. Rogers went to speak on their behalf and basically read some of his own song lyrics about how there's nothing more important than a kid understanding their feelings and things like that. And the as he finishes up, the man listening to him says, "Well, Mr. Rogers, you just got yourself $20 million. Now, I don't want to give away the whole movie, but I do want to say that I think everybody should go watch it. I think no matter who you are, you could definitely learn something from it, and I kept thinking the same thing as I watched it. And they finally addressed it at the end. I kept thinking, what would Mr. Rogers think of the world now? And when they kind of asked everybody that knew him, they all kind of took a moment to reflect, not knowing really how to answer. But they said that one of the things that he always did was he always asked people to take 1 minute of not speaking and just total silence to think about somebody that's affected their life or helped their life. So I also really love the fact that when they showed the crew for Mr. Rogers' show, the people that worked on the show most of its run, they were all long-haired hippie types. Yeah. Not squares or anything like you would think. They were total characters. Pranksters, they said even. One of my favorite moments in the movie was when they were filming one of the episodes and Mr. Rogers went to change his shoes and they had swapped out somebody else's penny loafers, so when he went to put them on, they didn't fit, and he starts laughing, realizing they had pranked him. And I'll tell you, one of my other favorite moments that really humanized Mr. Rogers was when they were interviewing one of his sons, and his son said, whenever we'd be sitting at the dinner table and he would want to say something that was not very Mr. Rogers, like, he would immediately go into one of the puppets' voices to let us know that he was going there. Another really interesting thing that I learned from the movie was Mr. Rogers had this fascination with the number 143. It was like, as they would say, it was almost like his astrological theory number, and 143 to him meant I love you. It was 1 letter in I, 4 letters in love, and 3 letters in you. But 143 was also his weight, his entire adult life. They said every day he would go swimming. At the end of his swim, he would hop out, jump on the scale would hit 143, and he'd get a big smile on his face because he knew that he had hit his, whatever he considered that was his sending I love you out into the world. Read this sign. It says, this is not apple juice, it's flavored tobacco. Flavorshookkids.org. Holy moly. Well, I think I want to go over to Mr. Rogers' Star now. Just so crazy to think about a man who is synonymous with kids television was originally going to be an ordained minister until the very first time he ever saw television. It changed his mind. Here they go again. Meryl Streep. Well, not far from Dr. Seuss, there he is. The star for Mr. Rogers. Like I said, kind of crazy to think of a guy who was originally, his plan was to go into the seminary and be an ordained minister. Then he made television, made enough that he thought he could have it recycled after he was done, go into reruns. He would go on to get his ordained ministership and then go back into television. Now, when he passed away, people actually protested outside of his grave because he supported gay people, black people, people that were different. They were out there protesting, saying that he didn't deserve God because he supported those people. But in the end, Mr. Rogers will always be known as the beacon of peace and lover of everyone.
Mr. Rogers, honey?
Throughout his life, Mr. Rogers was vilified for, some accused him of being gay. He was vilified for, people said that he was the reason that people thought that they were special and that they didn't have to achieve anything, and that they should have things handed to them because he said they were special. And then in the end, his real legacy had nothing to do with any of that stuff. It all came down to the lives that he touched and the people who took his values and transferred them into their kids as they grew up. One of Mr. Rogers' own crew members once said, if you did everything wrong in television, that's how you'd make the Mr. Rogers show. Now, if you'd ever like to see any of those things that made the Mr. Rogers show, like the cheap sets, the puppets, those are all in a museum right in Pittsburgh that anyone can visit every day. Donated by Mr. Rogers Foundation. Wow, great mural. Well, that's it, gang. Today we celebrated our 700th vlog. I hope if you've been watching all 700, I hope you've enjoyed them. And thank you to the loyal people who are here every day and will be here in the future. I want to thank Blaine Richards for becoming my newest Patreon. If you'd like to become a Patreon, just go to patreon.com/JordanTheLion, and anything you donate will go towards our adventures, our trips, whatever we do. Thank you very much for watching. 700 days. Have a great night. We'll see you all later. If you are a Mr. Rogers fan, if you forgot about Mr. Rogers, I hope today reminded you about him, and I hope you'll go out and see the movie. Have a great night, and goodbye.